The unthinkable has just happened. The most powerful man in the Middle East, a ruler who controlled his nation with an iron fist for decades, is dead. Iran's supreme leader has been killed, and the entire globe is holding its breath. This is the most critical breaking news event of our time. And the reality is that most people have absolutely no idea what is coming next. This is not just another political headline. This is an earth-shattering event that will shake every corner of the globe, disrupt international fuel markets, threaten the safety of global borders, and completely upend the balance of world power. From the very first second this news broke, the clock started ticking on a massive, unpredictable chain reaction. For 35 years, this one man was the absolute ultimate authority in a country of nearly 90 million people. He was not just a president or a prime minister. He was the supreme leader. That means every general, every politician, every single weapon, and every drop of oil answered to him and him alone. He was the mastermind behind a massive network of armed groups spread all across the Middle East. He built a fortress of power that many thought was completely untouchable. But now that fortress has been blown wide open, the ultimate authority is gone, and there is no clear, unified successor ready to peacefully take his place. Imagine a massive empire suddenly losing its emperor overnight. Total chaos. Right now, behind closed doors in Tehran, the most dangerous men in the country are scrambling. They are looking at each other, wondering who is going to take control and who might try to eliminate the competition. The military, the religious leaders, the secret police, they are all fighting for the steering wheel of a country that is suddenly driving blind. This is a massive power vacuum. And history shows that when a vacuum like this opens up, it is usually filled with extreme violence. The streets are on edge, the borders are on high alert, and global superpowers are scrambling their jets. The world, as it was known yesterday, is permanently gone. But the danger does not stop inside the borders of Iran. In fact, that is exactly where the real global threat begins. To understand what this means for the rest of the world, one must look at the massive spider web of power the supreme leader built over decades. He was the primary financial backer, the main weapon supplier, and the ultimate commander for heavily armed proxy groups all across the map, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen to militant factions in Iraq and Syria. Hundreds of thousands of fighters relied on him for their orders. Today, those fighters are waking up to find out their supreme commander has been wiped out. What happens to a heavily armed militia when the central boss is suddenly removed? Panic, anger, and a desperate, unpredictable need to strike back. These groups are now completely off the leash. Without the supreme leader to dictate when to hold back and when to push forward, rogue commanders will inevitably decide to take matters into their own hands. A massive arsenal of rockets, drones, and ballistic missiles is currently pointed in every direction, with no central command keeping the trigger fingers in check. The entire Middle East has instantly transformed into a giant powder keg, and the match has already been struck. Neighboring countries are rapidly locking down their airspace. Militaries across the globe are moving battleships and defense systems into position. Everyone is bracing for the inevitable retaliation. Then comes the devastating impact on the global economy. The moment this news hit the wires, sheer panic started rippling through the financial markets. Iran sits right next to the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow strip of water where a huge percentage of the world's oil supply passes through every single day. If the remaining leaders in Iran decide to block that strait in retaliation, global oil prices will skyrocket overnight. The cost to heat homes, fly planes, and transport food will hit the roof. People thousands of miles away will feel the sudden and severe economic shockwaves. The global panic goes much deeper than oil and shipping lanes. Hidden deep underground, buried beneath mountains of solid rock, lies Iran's most guarded secret, the nuclear program. For over a decade, the entire world has watched as centrifuges spun faster and faster, enriching uranium closer and closer to weapons-grade levels. The supreme leader always claimed the program was peaceful, a strict red line drawn by his religious decrees, but the international community knew the truth. Iran was always just weeks away from having enough material to build the ultimate weapon. Now, that religious decree is gone. The man holding the keys to the nuclear sites has been eliminated. So who controls the centrifuges today? Who commands the scientists? The terrifying reality is that nobody outside of Iran knows for sure. The fractured military commanders who are currently fighting for control of the country might decide that the nuclear weapon is their only guarantee of survival. In a state of total panic and chaos, a rogue general could order the final push to build a bomb, sparking a sudden and catastrophic arms race. Neighboring countries will not wait around to find out. If intelligence agencies detect even the slightest movement at those underground facilities, preemptive strikes are absolutely guaranteed. This is exactly why global superpowers are currently locked in emergency meetings. From Washington to London to Beijing, defense secretaries and top generals are staring at satellite images, analyzing every single truck movement near those bunkers. The margin for error is zero. A single miscalculation, a single rushed decision by an Iranian commander backed into a corner could trigger a regional war that pulls in every major military on Earth. Furthermore, foreign nations that previously relied on Iran for weapons and cheap energy, such as Russia and China, are now watching their strategic partners spiral into the unknown. The global chessboard is being violently shaken, and the pieces are falling everywhere. The nuclear shadow hanging over the Middle East has never been darker, and the fuse is burning shorter by the minute, while the world looks at the missiles and the oil routes. A massive human volcano is erupting on the streets of Tehran and across every major city in the country. For decades, millions of ordinary Iranian citizens have lived under strict rules, heavy censorship, and absolute control. Any sign of rebellion was met with swift and brutal punishment by the regime's powerful enforcers. Generations of young people have marched, protested, and sacrificed their lives begging for a taste of freedom, but the supreme leader's grip was simply too tight. The enforcement network was too terrifying. Today, that grip has been shattered. The ultimate symbol of their oppression has fallen. This is the moment millions of people have been waiting for, but it comes with a terrifying price. The streets are flooding with citizens who see a once-in-a-lifetime chance to take their country back. They are rushing the public squares, tearing down banners, and demanding a completely new way of life. However, the men with the guns, the fiercely loyal Revolutionary Guards, are not going to simply surrender their power and walk away. They are fighting for their own survival, their wealth, and their status. What happens when an unstoppable wave of angry, desperate citizens crashes into a heavily armed, panic-stricken military force? Absolute devastation. The world is about to witness one of the most violent internal struggles in modern history. The communication lines are being cut, the internet is going dark, but the videos leaking out show a country tearing itself apart from the inside. This is not just a peaceful transition of power. This is the beginning of a brutal, bloody civil war right in the heart of the Middle East. If the country collapses completely, millions of refugees will flood the borders, creating a humanitarian disaster of epic proportions. The neighboring nations simply cannot absorb that massive wave of desperate people. The shockwaves of this internal collapse will push the entire region to the absolute breaking point. The global fallout is expanding at a terrifying speed, and the situation unfolding right now is far bigger than a single region. The crisis has shattered the boundaries of the Middle East and is currently crashing into every major capital on the planet. From Washington to Beijing, from London to Moscow, the highest levels of global government are locked in a state of absolute, undeniable panic. Top military commanders are being pulled from their beds in the dead of night. They are standing in highly secured situation rooms, staring at global maps that are suddenly lighting up with red threat indicators in every possible direction, every single war game, every single emergency protocol, and every carefully calculated defense plan has just been thrown entirely out the window. The supreme authority figure who kept the tight, calculated grip on the region's most dangerous elements has been permanently removed. Now, a massive, uncontainable security crisis is spiraling completely out of control. Embassies across the globe are frantically burning sensitive documents and rushing to evacuate their staff before the violence reaches their gates. Commercial airlines are taking massive financial hits, desperately rerouting giant passenger jets thousands of miles out of the way just to avoid flying over a rapidly expanding war zone. But the true nightmare lies with the proxy armies. For decades, a massive network of heavily armed, highly trained militant groups was built across Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. They were funded, armed, and completely controlled by one central boss. Today, those fiercely loyal fighters are waking up completely leaderless. The leash has been completely severed. Without their ultimate commander to tell them when to hold back, these dangerous factions are operating on nothing but raw emotion and a blinding desire for violent revenge. Intelligence agencies are watching in absolute horror as rogue commanders crack open massive underground weapons caches. They are no longer waiting for permission from the capital to strike. Thousands of explosive drones and ballistic missiles are being prepped for launch, aimed directly at international shipping routes, foreign military bases, and critical global trade hubs. The defense systems of the most powerful nations are currently being pushed past their breaking points, just trying to calculate where the next fiery strike will land. The world is watching the terrifying birth of a completely decentralized, multi-front global war, and absolutely no single nation has the power to turn it off. While the outside world braces for incoming missiles, the country itself is violently collapsing from the inside out. A terrifying and completely ruthless power struggle is actively erupting in the shadows. For decades, the regime survived by carefully balancing two extremely powerful forces: the spiritual authority of the religious clerics and the brute force of the Revolutionary Guard. The Guard holds the guns, the massive bank accounts, and the heavy military infrastructure. With the supreme leader suddenly gone, that delicate balance has vanished in an instant. The military generals are not going to simply hand over control to a council of religious scholars. They are already rolling heavy tanks down the main streets of the capital. They are violently seizing control of state television stations to control the narrative. Most terrifying of all, they are heavily locking down the highly sensitive underground nuclear facilities. A brutal military dictatorship is aggressively trying to rise from the smoking ashes of the old regime, and they will eliminate anyone who stands in their way. But the citizens are refusing to be silenced this time. Millions of ordinary, desperate people are flooding the public squares in a massive, historic uprising. They are marching directly into the path of live ammunition and heavily armored vehicles with absolutely nothing but pure, unadulterated rage. Generations of people who have lived under strict, suffocating oppression see this exact moment as their one fleeting chance to finally take their country back. This fierce clash between a desperate, angry public and a terrified, heavily armed military machine is instantly turning major cities into bloody, active war zones. The internet has been completely shut down by the state to hide the extreme violence from the outside world, but the continuous, terrifying sounds of heavy gunfire and massive explosions are echoing constantly through the dark night. A nation of nearly 90 million people is actively tearing itself apart. The terrifying result is a massive wave of millions of desperate refugees rushing the borders to escape the slaughter. Neighboring countries are completely overwhelmed, aggressively slamming their borders shut and heavily fortifying military checkpoints. The intense ripple effects of this brutal civil collapse are about to smash directly into the global economy, sending the price of gas, groceries, and basic goods skyrocketing everywhere on Earth. The old world order is completely gone, and a very dark chapter has just begun. So what does all of this mean for the average person sitting at home watching this unfold? It means the safety bubble has officially popped. The massive fallout from the elimination of the supreme leader is not going to stay confined to the deserts of the Middle East. It is coming directly to every single hometown, every single gas pump, and every single grocery store on the planet. When the narrow shipping lanes of the Persian Gulf are blocked by burning tankers and military blockades, the global supply chain instantly freezes. The cost of fuel will double, then triple. Heating homes, driving to work, and buying basic food will become impossibly expensive overnight. The financial markets are already bracing for a historic crash because stability is the one thing the economy demands, and stability is completely gone. Furthermore, the terrifying threat of decentralized violence has never been higher. For decades, the global intelligence community only had to monitor one main source of command. They knew exactly who was writing the checks and who was giving the orders, and that central nervous system has been completely destroyed, leaving behind hundreds of heavily armed, angry, and fully independent sleeper cells operating globally. Security at airports, major sporting events, and public transport hubs will be forced into an unprecedented permanent lockdown. The daily life of every citizen will be drastically altered by the sudden, unpredictable threat of a rogue faction striking out in revenge. The world is watching a massive, uncontrolled explosion of radical factions that no longer have a master to hold them back. The harsh reality is that the era of a predictable global order ended the exact second the supreme leader was killed. The rules of international warfare have been entirely rewritten in a single day. There is no diplomatic off-ramp, no secret peace treaty waiting to be signed, and absolutely no clear leader ready to step in and calm the massive storm. The Middle East is a giant powder keg that has just been violently detonated, and the resulting shockwaves will permanently alter the course of human history. The next few days will determine if the world spirals into a catastrophic global conflict or if a terrifying new dictator rises from the ashes. One thing is absolutely certain: the world as it was known yesterday is gone forever.